سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. So this discussion came about because during the zakat program that we had, a lot of people had more questions on finance and what does business, what do transactions, what does money look like in Islam? And that's something that's a really important conversation for every single one of us to understand, to make sure that how we're dealing with our wealth and how we're bringing our wealth in is halal. So the first thing I want to talk about is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's statement, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. He says that Allah Azza wa Jal, and He made sales allowed, or He made trade allowed, and He prohibited riba. And there are a couple things I want to focus on this ayah. So over here, when we talk about trade, what is the difference between trade and riba? Trade, it does a few things, right? So trade, there's a low cost of entry. With trade, it is empowering, and trade is also, there's a shared risk versus riba. The difference with riba and that is that it requires capital. So I need a lot of money in order to engage in a ribawi transaction. Also, it's predatory, right? This is not something that's empowering, and also, the risk is shifted to the debtor. So there's going to be a couple terms that I want to make sure that everybody kind of follows and is aware of. You have a creditor and you have a debtor. Okay, do you guys know the difference between the two? So the creditor is the one that loans the money, and the debtor is the one that borrows it. So just to be clear. So over here, the risk is shifted to the debtor, meaning that the amount of risk that the creditor takes when he gives the money is very low. Versus trade in business. It's always going to be shared depending on the percentage of investment that the person has. Also, someone might say, okay, well, if I open a business, don't I need money? You do. How much money do I need to open a business? It depends on the business. Good. So what would be a low risk, low cost business? Or an example of one, I should say. I'm sorry? All right, manual labor. So for example, right now in the market, if I wanted manual labor, if I wanted to mow a lawn, if I wanted to remove snow, if I wanted to mow a lawn, I said mow a lawn already, right? I'm repeating myself now. But if I wanted to do some of these labor jobs, what is a very easy, common way for me to do that today, right? Here in Falls Church, what would I do?
Start an LLC.
I'm sorry? Start an LLC. That's right. So I can advertise. Yeah. So some of these things, they do cost money. And what's an easy way that the local population does that? So if I'm a laborer, what is an easy way for me to make money? Okay, I could work under someone else. So somebody who already has a business, I can work for them, or I can freelance. So before, we used to have a lot of people that would hang out at Home Depot. Yes. Now where do I go if I need laborers? I go 7-Eleven, right? So not a lot of homeowners in here, unfortunately. But so what would happen is that you can go to these places where you have people who are working freelance. What does it cost them to be in those spaces? It doesn't cost anything. So versus if I wanted to be in a ribawi transaction, there has to be somebody who has a lot of capital. And the thing about labor is a service. Right, which is very different because there are two things I can sell as an individual, right? I can sell a service or I can sell an asset. An asset, I can sell cars, I can sell chairs, I can sell TVs, whatever the case might be. With the service, I might sell my consultation, I might sell my labor power, I might sell my ability to speak, right? So people sell different things. And it's important to understand that some of them are very low cost, some of them are very low risk, some of them are higher cost, and some of them are higher risk. So what is trade? Here, this is a very general definition that I've placed here. Is the exchange of goods and services. I probably should have added here for value, but we'll get to that. So there are two types of trade, right? There's permissible, and there are three general conditions when we talk about permissible trade. In order for me to sell something, in order for me to purchase something, it has to be known. Meaning that, hey, I'm selling a pen, or I'm selling a computer, or I'm selling a chair. That's not a permissible transaction. And say, okay, hey, I'm going to sell you this microphone for money. I haven't specified how much. That wouldn't be a permissible type of transaction. Also, value. That exchange in value is something that's important because when we talk about certain types of impermissible transactions, if I asked you, why is gambling impermissible?
Because you don't know the value.
Because there's no value, right? There's no exchange of value. in that scenario, versus a service, versus an asset, versus different types of goods. There's always going to be an exchange of value in those situations. Someone might be like, okay, well, what about something like Costco, or something like a buffet? Right. So Costco. Do I have to pay to enter Costco?
No.
Well, no, I mean to buy something, right? So yeah, mashallah, he went very technical on us.
Okay.
I appreciate that. The pizza you don't have to pay, right? You just pay for the pizza. But like I'm saying, in order to be a customer, let me put it this way, right? To be a member, to be a customer, I have to pay, right, to get in.
Costco is not halal to-
I'm asking, right? I'm not passing a hukum yet, right? So in order to go to Costco or to go to a buffet, right? Is it known what I'm going to purchase when I go in?
Usually.
Do I know exactly what foods I'm going to eat in a buffet, or do I know? Is it guaranteed that I'll make a purchase if I go into Costco? Usually I do know, right? It's not always fixed, but when I'm paying for that, what am I paying for? Am I paying for the items, or am I paying for something else?
Like when you get your membership?
Access. So you're paying for access, right? That's the important thing. Even with a buffet, I'm paying for access. And that's why it's permissible, right? Because it's not necessary. When I'm paying for a buffet, I'm not paying for individual items. I'm paying to have access to those items. And it's the same thing with the Costco membership, right? I'm paying to have access to those things. And that's something that's really important. It also has to be halal, right? So let me think. What would be like selling pork or selling beer? Can I do that? Well, someone might be like, oh, well, I know the amount, I know the value, I know these things, right? But I still can't sell those things because they, in and of themselves, are haram. So an impermissible type of transaction would be the opposite of that, right? So if I'm selling something that's unknown, if I'm not describing to you and I'm like, hey, listen, I just give me money and I'm going to give you a shirt without describing what that shirt is. This is called bay al-majhul, right? So it's an unknown type of transaction. If there is so I want to be very careful in how I say this. If there is no or an uneven exchange of value of the same good, okay? Because if I'm purchasing a chair for $10, sometimes you say, oh man, you got a really good deal. Yes? And someone might say, oh, that's an uneven exchange of value, meaning that I gave less money than I should have for that particular item. Does that make sense? What I mean here is that if I'm exchanging something, so for example, if you have silver, or if I have gold, and I said, okay, hey, listen, give me 30 grams of silver, and I will give you 35 grams of silver, right? This is an uneven exchange. And that uneven exchange would be considered impermissible because that is actually riba.
So does that mean like anthropology is pretty much like...
I don't know, I'm not familiar, you're gonna have to...
Anthropology is like absurdly expensive for no reason. And
So, I mean, it's if there's value, if you see value in that. There are a lot of stores that you can go to. If buying like a Coach purse, for example, or going to Lululemon, or right, what I mean, like you have these things that are like, wow, that's really pricey or that's really expensive. But do I feel value in that product when I'm making that purchase? There are some people who will go to certain steakhouses, right? And the steak will be like $100, and it's like, man, this is like a $15 cut for the steak. And some people, no, like, listen, the way they spice it, the way they cook it, like, I see the value that's in that. So whether I see that, okay, do I feel I was taken advantage of? Sometimes I'll go to a mechanic and be like, yeah, man, the mechanic charged me like $300. And it's like, yeah, well, I had the same work done over here and he charged me $150, right? So as long as I feel that exchange of value is reasonable, that's fine. Now, if somebody's taking advantage of someone else, that's very different, right? That's very different. Yes?
So I had a question, slight category or somewhere.
So that's something I wanted to save a little bit more for the third talk that we did. Today I just want to put down some general guidelines. But just to give you like a quick preview of that, I cannot rent or offer services to something that is exclusively haram. Now, an example of that. I know that they don't do it, but let's say I own a strip mall and a McDonald's wants to come and sell. Depending on where you stand with McDonald's, right? So let's assume that you think the meat is okay and it's only the pork that is problematic. And in that situation, if you have, like, they sell this pork, is that a majority of their sales? Probably not. Is there an allowance in the Sharia that will say, okay, in this situation it's okay because the majority of what their products are permissible? Another example of this is like, okay, well, what if I'm a cashier, right? I'm a cashier at Giant or Stop and Shop. They not only do they sell pork, but they also sell alcohol. And someone might be like, okay, well, because I've had a number of young men, young women, they're like, oh, can I be a cashier at those spaces and places? And I'll tell them yes, because you're not the active seller of those products and items. But like I said, this is more like a third lecture discussion. But like I said, just to give you an idea, the opinion that I personally hold is like, as long as the majority, and my majority, I would say like a high majority, and you'll have scholars differ over what that actually means and looks like. Like for me, my tolerance is pretty low. I'll say like, all right, as long as 70% of it is halal, I'm okay with it. Some will be like, no, it has to be like 97%. Right? So it really depends on your level, on your risk tolerance, and how that applies, inshallah. If you guys could just sit on this side, I would appreciate it, because I don't want to block the cashier. Are returns and warranties valid? Sure. So what if it's defective? Would you allow me to return it? Like if I bought a laptop from you and I took it home and the laptop's not working, what should I do?
Return it.
I can return it. Right. What if it happens after a week? What if happens after a month?
Which is
Okay. Is insurance? Hold on.
a lot of people say that it's wrong. And so, but
Yeah.
in America, you have to have car insurance if you want to drive a car.
So there's a few angles that this can be discussed. I'm just putting it out there right now as a discussion point. I will get into it in the third discussion and third lecture, inshallah, where we actually go into practical examples of like, okay, like, what about life insurance? Okay, can I get extended warranties? Right? Because that's no longer from the seller, right? There's a third party now that is protecting this item. Is it okay for me to do futures for certain types, like in stocks, certain cryptocurrencies? How do you engage and deal with those?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so I had this gold jewelry set. It was like 22 karat, and I wanted to return it. And he said, "Oh, well, I can't return it to you at the price that you bought it at. I'll buy it for its weight back."
Okay.
And so now that's making like that. This question reminded me of that. It's like
At that point, is it a return? I want you to think about that. Or is it a completely separate transaction? So, for example, you bought gold from me, right? And then he purchases it from you. Would you say that's okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what if he was me? Why would the ruling change? They're two separate transactions. If I buy a car from you, and then I sell the car back to you, right? It's not a return. Those are just two separate transactions. But like I said, I just want to have a general guideline discussion here, and then we can get into specific examples. So first, as far as returns go, by ijma, there's agreement amongst all the scholars that it is permissible to return items. The moment I find a defect in something, I can take it back to the seller, and I have a right to a refund, except in what case?
That you broke it and you're lying about it?
You have to be very transparent. So am I returning this because there is a real defect of it? Is it something that I caused?
Okay.
Or am I just taking advantage of
I mean,
it?
that's a very personal type. You know what I mean? Like, am I taking advantage of it? Because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what if I did take advantage of it? I'm being very honest. Okay, let's say I go to Costco, I buy socks, I wear those socks for like 3 weeks, and then I take them back to Costco and I return them.
Well, I mean, to me, this is something that I would not do.
You wouldn't. No, but we're not talking about personal piety.
It's not,
We're talking about permissibility.
Yeah, I would say it's haram.
What if there were
Hold on.
policies?
Yeah, I'm sorry, one at a time. Yeah.
It's purchased on the terms that you purchased on.
Okay.
If the terms say 30 days
Uh-huh.
policy,
Yes.
then I think it's permissible within those 30 days.
Okay. Yes.
What if it says that they'll take it back in any condition?
Sure.
And so there's like, even if you used it, even if you wore it,
Yeah.
you opened a can of whatever, and you didn't like.
No,
it was terrible?
both of you are saying the same thing. I agree 100%. If it is the policy of the store, that it is based on that policy that I'm making that purchase. right? So this is the agreement that I have with that store. If I go to McDonald's and I take a bite out of the hamburger and I return the burger, can I do that?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
It's up to the seller. It's up to the seller.
They do give you.
Huh? They do? Okay, mashallah. Good business practice. So like you can do that, right? It really, at that point, it depends on the seller, right? In whatever condition the seller puts forth. What if the seller puts the condition all sales are final?
He will stop doing business.
Well, it depends,
Yeah.
right? It depends.
Oh yeah, like
Because
if you're buying a gold from Costco.
well, I mean, so some there are, you know, in what industry this is very common? Firearms. Firearms. Like if I go to buy a gun, I can't return a gun.
Yeah.
I can sell it. I can go to a consignment store. There's like a lot I can do with it, but I can't return a gun. Like I have to resell it. So there are certain industries, and nobody can tell me that the firearm industry is doing poorly, right? They're doing very well. So if you have an entire industry that is built off of all sales are final, another industry that works off of that is like industries that deal with defective items, right? It's like, okay, hey, listen, we pulled this from the Amazon returns, or we got this from Target returns, or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And if you're coming and you're purchasing and you're buying this from us, then the sale is final. Can a seller do that? Absolutely. Why? Because I'm agreeing to that, right? I'm agreeing to those conditions. And as long as I understand that, hey, I'm taking a chance with this, then that's the chance that I took. Hey, what about warranties?
Like buying warranties.
Just a warranty. So, for example, if I'm selling you this iPad, and I'm like, okay, hey, I'm giving you a 6-month warranty on this iPad, or I'm giving you a 3-month warranty on this iPad. Is that permissible?
Up to the seller.
Right? It's up to the seller, but someone might say like, oh, okay, well, you don't know if it's going to go bad. How long should that be, right? Should it be a week? Should it be a month? Should it be 6 months? Should it be a year? Many times we purchase cars, and different car manufacturers have different warranties. Is there something stipulated in the Sharia that says that this is the amount of warranty you have to give on an item?
You have to give them an item if you're selling it.
I'm asking. So there are two very famous hadith. One of them I think is important, is that there's no profit without liability. Meaning that here the Prophet ﷺ, he says, إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ بِالضَّمَانِ, that if every time you make a sale, I as a seller have to take a risk in that, right? I have to take a risk in that sale, because whatever item I'm offering, or even a service, right? If I'm offering, with the services it gets a little bit trickier, but if I'm selling an item or I'm selling an asset, I as the seller have to be, there's a level of responsibility that falls on me.
Trust between the seller and the buyer.
Absolutely. There's a very famous hadith, hadith Abay Sarrat. Now, what is that hadith? This is where the Prophet ﷺ said that if you have a seller who has an animal that milks, like so if I have a goat or a sheep, and I do not milk that sheep or goat for a few days, and then I take it to the market and sell it. Like, this is problematic. Why? Not the weight. Because usually if I'm buying a milking animal, I'm not buying it because of the weight. Why am I buying it? For the milk. Right? That's why I'm buying it, because it milks. And if I go to the market and I haven't milked this animal for a few days, what happens?
It's gonna show
It dries
us
up.
that it's milking.
No, the udders are going to be full. And if I as a buyer, what am I going to be? I'm just like, oh wow. Yeah, I'm going to be like, man, this animal produces a lot of milk. But when I go to make that purchase, I'm still taking a risk. I take it home and I milk it, and after a few days, I'm like, a day passes, 2 days passes, 3 days, and I'm like, yo, what is wrong with this animal? It's not producing any milk. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Rudduha bit-sa'a min at-tamr." He says that you have every right to return the animal because the animal is defective. But not only do you return it with a sa'a. A sa'a is a volume, right? So it's 4 handfuls of dates. Why do you do that? Some scholars say for the value of the milk that you took from it, for the use that you got from the animal, right? So however long you took it, this is a way to return that. Because the milk, most likely what happened with the milk? Right? Well, not expired. not expired. You drank it, right? You consumed it. It got used, right? And if I don't have refrigeration, I don't really pasteurize my milk, like historically, how quickly does milk go bad? It goes bad pretty quickly, right? Unless I'm turning it into butter or I'm turning it into ghee or something like that. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ said, meaning that there are many situations, even if I find the defect in the animal, after some time, I have every right to return. And there is no stipulation in the Sharia that says that this is the minimum or maximum amount of time you are allowed to insure or warranty an item. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَأْكُلُوا الرِّبَا أَضْعَافًا مُضَاعَفًا وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. That here, He Azza wa Jal, He says that you who believe do not consume riba, doubled and redoubled, be mindful of Allah so that you may prosper. So over here, there are a couple things I want to point out. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, تَأْكُلُوا. So there's a focus here on consumption, which I think is something really important. The other focus here is the fact that He Azza wa Jal, He focuses on riba. What group of people is not being spoken about here? So,
The debtors.
right? So He's not talking about the debtors. He's focusing on the creditors. Throughout the entirety of the Quran, there is a singular focus on creditors. And this is something that I want to point out, and I think it's something that's really important. So why focus on consumption? Why focus on the creditor?
Because people are always going to be,
In need for him.
there are going to be people who are going to be desperate.
Yeah.
She's so precious. Sorry. Okay. People are always going to be in need, and there are always going to be desperate people who will be
Take advantage.
that will be vulnerable and easily taken advantage of. And there will always be people who are in a position to take advantage of other people.
زين.
So
Okay.
when you're in need, yeah.
تفضل.
I was going to say that I think the cycle, the whole premise of interest is
Mhm.
based on consumption.
Okay.
The cycle ends and
Mhm.
there's no one to make money off of it.
Sure. Okay. Like both of you, closer, but yes, go ahead.
I was going to say it's from the creditor that the source of corruption.
Sure, it causes corruption. I agree, 100%, 100%. And why is it corrupt? Or let me ask this question in a different way. Why would I borrow $10,000 for 15?
Because I need
Is that a lot? No, thank you, because I need the money. Is it logical? And I want us to think in a very logical level. Does it make sense for me to pay you $15,000 for me to get 10? Is that a fair transaction? No, it's not. So why would I do that? Because I don't have a choice. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala focuses so much on the creditors, right? And not the debtor. I have a question. What is the question?
So it says, I'm a new federal government employee. My question is about the thrift savings plan account. I would like to know if the Imam knows about this, if it's halal or not. I have read online conflicting information and wanted to get clarity on this. You're offering 5% match and I would like to take advantage of that, but only if it's halal.
So when it comes to savings accounts, and this is something I wanted to spend a little bit more time on the third lecture, I would say that there are 3 levels depending on the level of choice that they have. In general, I would say there are 3 tiers that an individual can invest in when it comes to these 401ks, when it comes to these thrift savings plans, when it comes to Roth IRAs, or whatever vehicles that there are for like fund development or for wealth development. The best tier is those if you can connect to some kind of Islamic ETF, whether it be Amana or Wahid, or there's a few that are out there now. I think that is the safest way and the safest mechanism. The second way is that you have what are called socially responsible stocks. Socially responsible means is that these companies will not invest in pornography, they will not invest in tobacco, they will not invest in alcohol. But you know what industry they have no problem investing in? Banking. So that's where it becomes interesting. And then you have open. I will say if I don't have a choice, take advantage of that match. And the reason I say that is because an individual, when given wealth building opportunities, you should not waste them, because this wealth is an amana that is given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That match is a gift from your company, and that is halal to take.
even though they're investing it.
Whatever they're investing in, because the match that they're giving is a gift. Does that?
It's still getting invested.
I understand.
Okay.
Stand my, right? That match is a gift. If I have the ability to shift it or to change it, then that's what I have to do, and that is my first obligation. If I cannot, what I would suggest is that whatever profit is earned off of that, we're not talking about the match anymore. Whatever profit comes from that, well, go give it to your masjid. And that match that you were given, that is a gift for you, and I have no problem with an individual taking it, because what held that value isn't something that I wanted, right? That vehicle that's holding the value is not something that I wanted. I was forced into that. But because I'm forced into it, I would still say for the individual to take advantage of it, pull your money out the moment you're given an opportunity to, right? So when it matures, take your money out as soon as you can. Whatever profit you earn from that and whatever you feel that you're uncomfortable with, give it away. You know what I mean? Like, why give others the opportunity to have that money? Even people ask me sometimes, like, okay, well, I have money just sitting as an emergency fund. Can I keep it in a savings account? And I'm like, okay, who better to use that money? Is it better that you allow the bank to keep that money and to use it, or is it better that you channel it and use it in a meaningful way? I would even say for us as Muslims, there's a lot of focus on building masajid. There's a lot of focus on building Islamic schools, right? You have funeral services and things right now. We need financial institutions.
So would you say that?
I would say have a Muslim bank.
Yeah.
No. I didn't say Islamic.
A Muslim, what do you mean? Like even with riba?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why?
I see what you mean. So my
Yeah.
question is, like, let's say I have a saving account.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
checking account.
Sure.
I never opened saving
Yeah,
account. Does that mean that I should switch to
Yeah,
saving
if you,
account and take?
if you can, I would say yes, absolutely, because one of the purposes of the Sharia is hifd al-mal, that we protect our wealth, right? And this is part of protecting the wealth. I am in a system where I have very limited options on how to do that and what to do it with. Do I think do I think voluntarily, like, oh, I should make an effort in helping these institutions? No, absolutely not. Like, but is there a way for me to benefit from it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would say take advantage of that. Yes.
I have a question on so it's more like about the previous slide.
Mm-hmm.
Why are people so convinced that anyone who's in a position of need where they take on a loan, where they have to pay riba, they're also...
So we'll talk about situations in the third class on what are the permissible situations for me to take a loan.
Okay.
Can I get a mortgage? Can I take a small business loan? Can I take a student loan? Right? These are all very valid questions. And someone for the business one, I have people come to me and say, hey, can I take a business loan to start a business? And I say, the first question I ask is okay, well, why can't you get partners in this? They said, because it's very difficult to build wealth when you have multiple partners in something, unless it's an angel investor, right? And angel investors are okay, listen, here's the money, just give me back my capital at whatever point and go build your business. The problem I have with small business loans is, do you guys know what percentage of first-time businesses fail? Yeah, it's about 80%. So unless the only people that I personally allow to take those small business loans are those who have solid investment plans, who have a solid business plan, who have run it by other people in that sector, who have done market research. And then those are the ones I allow. Because why do a majority of businesses fail? Many of them fail to do their research. The other situation where I have far less issue in people taking business loans are when they're expanding their business, because they're already working on a successful model. So are there situations where I think it's reasonable and that we can take advantage of those mechanisms? Yes, there are. Is it ideal? No, it's not. But if you live in an unideal world, I truly believe this. And this is something I truly believe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent us on this earth with guardrails that we should stay between. He didn't send us on this earth to suffocate. And if I feel that I'm being suffocated by the Sharia, either I'm misunderstanding it or I'm misapplying it. Because that's not why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He didn't send me here to be punished and to live a dreary, life is no. And the thing is, if you make that choice, hey, listen, you know what? I want to rent the rest of my life. I'm only I need to see the animal being slaughtered in front of me before I consume it. And Bismillah, go for it. I'm not even mad. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make that a means for you to enter His paradise. You cannot apply that to other people. That's not a realistic way for a community to live and to thrive. So over here, why focus on the consumption? Because those individuals are usually the oppressors, and they're always taking advantage of those who are oppressed. Like I said, the debtor, most of the time, right? Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala focuses on the debtor, on the creditor, is most of the time the debtor has no choice. So people who fall behind their credit card payments, or people who take these loans, why are they taking these loans? They just want big screen TVs? Most of the time that's not the case. Someone might, oh, like, why do you need a new car? Or why do you need this? Okay, what if his only skill is driving? What if all he knows how to do is be a taxi driver? What if all he knows how to do is deliver? What if the easiest way, remember we were talking about one of the easiest way to get into businesses is to offer a service and a skill set that I have? Okay, well, what if my skill set is delivering? What do I do? And in order for me to deliver, I need a 2018 or newer vehicle. How many people who just landed, or how many people who are just getting into the business, or how many people who are just starting out, how many high school graduates have that financial ability or independence to go and make that purchase? Like, very few. No, I'm saying, like, yeah, it's very few, right? So some of them might have that social safety network where they'll have parents, or they'll have family, or they'll have other people in the community be like, no, I'm going to invest in this person. But that's very rare. Like, you can't expect that for everybody. Like I said, the beauty of Islam is, like, it's a very real religion, right? It's very practical. Like, it always gives us ways to navigate society and navigate the difficulties that are in front of us. So the oppressed, like we said, that usually that person doesn't have a choice, right? If they had a choice, why would they do that? Like, it doesn't make sense to them. Does anybody want to waste their money? No, nobody wants to waste their money. Usually they've exhausted all other avenues. The number of people that have come to me like, Sheikh, I don't know what else to do. Like, I've applied for financial aid. I've tried over here. I've asked for handouts. I'm asking people. They're like, what do I do? I was like, okay. I was like, do you have a plan? Yes, I have a plan. Okay, then take debt wherever you have to take it. Yes, Yaqi, hold on.
Does ignorance play a part?
Ignorance it's tough, man. Like the ignorance card. In what way? Let me ask for clarification.
I wouldn't say until like 2013 and 14. I studied accounting.
Okay.
I studied all of it, and I still wasn't clear on a lot of the stuff. And
Sure.
I thought, you just move through life, you go get a loan from a bank, you do this, you do that.
Yeah.
Until someone pushed back and said, think about it this way.
Yeah.
it became clear.
Okay.
Otherwise, I was gonna move through my entire life just kind of engaging in traditional banking.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think there are certain situations and certain people who are like, I hear a lot of things like, oh, well, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's all the same. What's the big deal? All right, these are the financial tools that are available to us. What's the big deal? I do hear that, right? So I think in such situations, depending on their exposure, because there are some people who do have that exposure, I have no problem excusing them. And then there are people who might be engaged with it knowingly, but they understand certain things, and it can serve as a means. And I think that's important too. At the end of the day, like, the person doesn't willingly want to be involved. Like, nobody wants to waste their money, right? Everybody wants to protect their wealth. Everybody wants to protect their money. And most people don't want to, they're not willingly involved in these transactions. And the ribawi system is not a system that empowers anyone, right? It only takes advantage of people. It only hurts them. It only pushes them down further. And I'm going to share some examples. So these hadith are really important because not all blame can we put on the creditor. Are there situations where people willingly engage in debt?
Yeah.
Right?
Consumerism.
Like, so hyper-consumerism is like, I'm going to buy a phone even if I can't afford it. I'm going to buy the TV even if I can't afford it. I'm going to go beyond my means even if I can't. Yes, تفضل يا أخي.
What about buy now, pay later? Just
Sure.
because you don't have the means right now.
It depends, right? And that, man, that's a good one. Bayn mu'ajjal is something that most scholars say is permissible. And what does that mean is like, okay, hey, listen, I'll sell you this TV and I'll sell it to you for $300. And you're like, hey, I don't have $300. Is there another deal? It's like, okay, listen, I'll sell it to you for $500 over 6 months. But that transaction is between me and you. What happens in a ribawi system? You have a third party. So you'll go to Capital One, or you'll go to Citibank, or you'll go to Discover, and they'll be like, yeah, sure, you can take this TV home today, no problem. And all you have to do is make this payment, and we're going to compound this interest and compound you into oblivion. And you're going to be paying for this TV for the rest of your life. That's where it becomes a problem, right? Versus this direct transaction that we had, like that me and you had. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. So over here, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's cursed the one who accepted riba and the one who paid it. This is muttafiq alayh, it's in Bukhari and Muslim. Jabir said that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam cursed the acceptor of riba and its payer and the one who records it and the two witnesses, and he said they are all equal. Yeah. So again, this is for the one that voluntarily engages in ribawi transactions. This is the individual who he doesn't care, right? They don't care where their money's coming from. They don't care what the item is. I have to have it. You know that hyper-consumerism? Like, I have to have that phone. I have to have that TV. These are the ones who are held accountable, not the people who do not have a choice. So I want to make sure that we understand the difference between them. Because if I don't have a choice, in that situation, it's actually permitted. Why?
Can you say that louder? I'm sorry.
Sure. Or you could,
Say it louder.
Or you could sit closer. If you don't have a choice, what is the ruling?
What is
If I don't have a choice, what is the ruling? It's permissible. If I don't have a choice, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hold me accountable for something that I cannot do? Are you guys following? Like, does that make sense? When we look at the ayah, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that Allah does not burden the soul more than it can bear. If I am in a situation where I do not have a choice, Allah will not hold me accountable to that. Yes?
So that argument is fine, right?
So I want to ask you one question. You know, what terms have I not used so far?
Interest?
Yeah, I did that purposely. And we're going to get into that discussion. Okay? So stay with me, and we'll get there, inshallah. Yes?
Are we going to go into what defines a need?
Yes. I have no problem having that discussion. الضروريات تبيع المحظورات صح. But I was going to say there are 5. But قاعدة صحيحة. So you have 5 situations that are considered ضرورة, that are considered necessity. To preserve my life, to preserve my religion, to preserve my wealth, to preserve my lineage, and to preserve life, health, lineage, religion, money. No, what is it? I said life, health. No, life and health are the same thing.
Life, wealth.
Life, wealth, religion. أيوة.
Lineage, you said?
lineage. أيوة. شو الخامس؟ والله أنا نسيت الخامس. Oh, العقل. جزاكم الله خير. So yeah, so the aql is the intellectual integrity, right? So these are the 5. These are the 5 ضروريات. You know the problem with what some people do when it comes to ضرورة? They limit it to life.
The reason I was asking
Yeah.
is I've heard where people living, let's say in DMV,
Yeah,
have a different standard of life that defines,
sure.
determines choice
Hmm.
versus or a need
Yeah.
versus let's say you go to some overseas some country.
So these are the 5 categories. How do I determine need for you? I can't. Your needs are going to be different than mine.
So it's just generally just apply the rules and be conscious of it.
It's very subjective, right? And at the end of the day, when we get into the conversation next week on I think one aspect of it that really helps is understanding israf. Like, what is excess? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تسرفوا, don't fall into excess, what does that actually mean? How do you determine that? And the same thing would apply here, right? How do I know that I've crossed that line? How do I know I've gone too far? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Other warnings, and these are hadith I'm sure some of you might be familiar with. The first one is a dirham of riba which a man receives knowingly is worse than committing adultery 36 times. You guys have heard this hadith? Yes? This hadith is weak. The next one is a dirham of riba which a man receives knowingly is worse than committing adultery 36 times in the hatim. The hatim is the area next to the Kaaba, right? That circular area. Some of you might be familiar with this hadith as well. Also weak. The next hadith is riba is of 70 different kinds, the least grave of being equivalent to a man marrying his own mother or being intimate with his own mother.
I've heard of this.
This hadith is also weak. The reason I'm mentioning this is not because I want to diminish the impermissibility of riba. Okay, I want to be very clear. Riba bil ittifaq, by agreement, is haram. Okay? It is haram. It is from the kaba'ir. It is from the major sins. But we have to be academically honest when it comes to the application. Some people like using these ahadith as a way for people, like to really warn them and to really scare them from riba. You can do that with weak hadith, but these hadith, like some of them, they're like close to being fabricated. Like this is stuff that we have to be very careful, because now we're attributing something to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the hadith Jabir that we took in the beginning, that's enough, right? That's all you need. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curses those people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran that those individuals who engage in riba, Allah and His Messenger they're at war with them. Like, khalas, that's it. Be academically honest, be spiritually honest when it comes to dealing with these issues. Like, there's no reason to use weak hadith to justify an argument. So what is it about?
Did you mention that you're differentiating between riba and interest?
I'm getting there right now. Because the question is, now it's like, oh, Sheikh, okay, you've been talking about riba for like the past 15 minutes. What is riba? Yes?
Yeah.
Is that a valid question?
Yeah.
Like, what is riba? For me, growing up, riba was like a boogeyman. It was like a boogeyman. I always thought it was like, oh, interest equals riba. Like, this is what we all hear. I'm going to question that a little bit, right? Because I think it's very important for us. Let's look at the ayat. Let's look at the hadith. And then this will give us a very clear idea of what riba actually is. So linguistically, I think part of the problem is this. When we look in the lugha, what riba means namu, right? It means like grow. Like anything that is grow, anything that increases. But if you just look at a transaction, like it'll look like there's increase. Is there actual increase? And this is something I want to talk about. So what is it? Islamically, you have different definitions of what riba is. I'll read them to you very quickly, inshallah. The first of the Hanafis, they say, and this is Hashit ibn Abidin. Ibn Abidin, very famous Hanafi scholar. Any extra on return, even if following other Sharia guidelines, placed conditionally by either party guaranteeing an extra return. The Shafis and the Malikis, an agreement on return with parameters that fall outside the Sharia at the time of agreement with a delay of payment or an asset. And this is al-Qawanin al-Fiqhiyya and Mughni al-Muhtaj. And the Hanabila, they say increase in specific assets. This is in Kashf al-Qana'a, in specific assets. Right, so I want to point that out. Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions, actually before we get there, like why is it so bad? What happens in Meccan society with these ribawi transactions? So when a man was unable to pay back his debt, he had to separate himself and his family from his tribe where they would starve to death. Right, this was one of the punishments if you couldn't pay your debts. They would become slaves. So an individual could become enslaved because of his debt. Out of fear, their daughter is becoming slaves, the debtor would kill her. So, you know how we talk about the Quraysh used to kill their daughters? Like this was one of the reasons, because they fell into debt and they didn't want their daughters to fall into prostitution. They created a class of jobless, impoverished people because the people at the top, they just take advantage of those who are weak, and that cycle continues. It's very vicious. Allah mustan. Basically, there were no social programs to protect these people at all. Where were they going to go? Who's going to pay them off? I mean, you might be able to go to a wealthy individual and be like, hey, listen, can you cover to my debt? Or you go to someone who has a lot of political clout and power and be like, hey, can you talk to so-and-so? Maybe, he can lower it, or maybe he can do something about it. But there is no protections in place for these people. And this plays a role into some of the things that I am going to be talking about. Like, why is this an important point, and why did I point this out? So how was riba implemented? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about muda'afa, right? Like how it's multiplied. And this is very parallel to what we know to be compound interest, right? So you owe money and you just kind of keep owing money, right? And it just keeps adding on to itself and it keeps multiplying upon itself. And what happens to the debtor is that he's constantly trying to catch up, and it never gets to a point where he actually can. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he talks about gain, right? Gaining from some others and taking advantage of others. This is also something that gives us an idea of what riba is and what it entails. But essentially the debts are multiplied. And this is a very important point, and this gives us an idea of what riba is. Does the same apply to fiat? So when the Hanabila said it applies to specific assets, those are the assets the Prophet ﷺ was specific with. So gold, silver, sha'ir, hinta, right? So like wheat, oats, barley, dates. He says riba applies to all of these assets. Now, are gold and silver the same as dollars and cents?
No, because they increase and decrease in value over time.
Okay, that's one argument. That no, it's not the same because the value fluctuates.
But it's known
Uh-huh.
to have value between people. So it's
Sure, and that's the counter argument. All right, well, this is something that is known to have value between people. So I want to give a few examples. If I borrowed 30 grams of gold from you 10 years ago, how much will I owe you today?
Whatever the value of it is.
30 grams of gold, right? So you could say, oh, dollars, this and that, but if I took 30 grams of gold and I returned 30 grams of gold to you, would you be upset? No. Right, it's the same amount. It's the same in amount and in value. طيب. If 10 years ago, if I borrowed $10,000 from you, how much will I owe you today? $10,000, right? $10,000, but in value, $12,000.
Yeah.
Why? What changed? Yeah.
Inflation.
Inflation. That the value of that dollar, it got weaker. So that $10,000 I'm returning to you after 10 years, I'm actually, if I give you 12, I'm actually giving you the value that you took from me. Does that make sense? And sometimes it's very easy for us as Americans to be like, oh, and, to equate, why we equate interest with riba so easily is because the dollar is relatively stable compared to other currencies. I want to give you guys two examples. 94,000 Pakistani rupees 10 years ago. How much will I owe you today? So in amount, 94,000, and in value, 176,000. Another example. So LBP, you guys know Lebanese pounds? How much will I owe you today? So 1.5 million Lebanese pounds, 895 million Lebanese pounds. I don't know the Syrian currencies, you'll have to forgive me.
It's much worse.
It's much worse?
It was.
Okay. I was like, Junani didn't save us?
No, I mean, now yeah, it seems like he has connections. Yeah.
Okay. Khair. Allah yassir lakum. So the summary of scholarly opinions, Ibn Qayyim, he mentions this. He says that concerning dirahim and dinanir, a group of scholars say that the criteria is weight. Because this is how gold and silver are exchanged. It's not exchanged in volume, it's exchanged in weight. This is the madhab of Ahmed in one narration and the madhab of Abu Hanifa. Another group of scholars said that the criteria is their value. And this is the statement of Shafi'i, Malik, and Ahmed in another narration. I feel that this is sound and actually hold it to be solely correct. Yeah, Shafi'is, bro. They got it all figured out. No. There's a valid difference of opinion of amount versus value. Which kind of changes up the entire paradigm of how we deal with money. So are riba, interest, and usury the same thing?
Yes.
That's how I feel too.
Because it destabilizes the economy. It is predatory.
Sure.
And
Specifically to assets.
Sure. No, I follow everything that you're saying, but my question is like, all right, or let me ask this question in a different way. Do you guys know, in U.S. law, is there a difference between interest and usury?
yes.
Yes. Interest is legal, and usury is illegal.
But that's like potato.
Why? What is the difference? How do they define them? I think here, riba we've defined, right? Like we've spent all the different. Interest is a monetary charge for the privilege of borrowing money. What is that charge based off of? It's based off an APR, which is set by the Federal Reserve. Okay? Anything that is above that is considered usury. Why? Because now they're saying you are not allowing an exchange of fair value. You're going above that, and now you've entered into predatory territory.
However, they are both
Umbrella.
So what's the difference between fiat and gold? Like you're saying that no, you can't. So because the problem I'm having right now, Asak, is you're saying that okay, you can't deal with fiat the same way you deal with gold and silver, but now you're saying that no, it is you have to like interest is riba.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know what.
You don't know? Fiat is currency. I'm sorry. Just to be clear, commodity currencies is gold and silver, right? And fiat currency is money that's printed.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I should have made that clear. Oh, the car? Allah. Oh, but, yeah, I know, but I'm sorry. No, okay. No, but I apologize. I wish I had made that clear sooner. I really do apologize. So fiat is money that is printed. Commodity is that which is naturally produced or mined. So do we deal with fiat the same way that we deal with gold and silver? No. Why? What is the fundamental difference?
the value and amount.
Okay, you're close. Yes. Can you help me understand what you mean when you say that? So can I say that in a different way? The amount of money I print, I can control.
Exactly.
The amount of gold that is available is
Limited.
it's limited. It's not controlled.
So it was the case before they.
Before they decoupled it. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right. At that time, it would make sense to me. I would agree with you 100%. But I'm saying today, how come they know what the interest rate is?
Competition? Like competition?
I would
Okay.
say how much gold is being circulated.
Well, that's ideal, right? But no. I'm talking about here in the United States.
Yeah.
How come I know exactly what percentage my dollar value is going to drop in a year? How do I know that ahead of time?
Because of
Yes. The Federal Reserve. They know how much money they're going to print. And the amount of money in circulation dictates the value of that dollar. And if I'm able to predict that and tell you that, that's very different than how you deal with commodity currency, with gold and silver, because you don't have that control. Absolutely. I don't know how much gold is available.
No. I mean, I
Yeah.
understand this conceptually.
Yes.
But I don't understand why you were saying it's different. Like the.
Why is it different?
Yeah. Like why?
Okay.
Why is it different from what you know? Yeah.
Sure. So let me repeat it again. With dollars, I know how much the value of a dollar changes in a year
Yes.
because the Federal Reserve dictates how much that percentage will be.
Okay, but why does that matter and compare like
Because the value changes. And remember, are we talking about an uneven exchange in value or amount? That was the fundamental difference of opinion.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if I borrowed $100 from you at the beginning of the year, is it fair for me now to expect $105.37?
Because the value changed because they printed more money throughout the year. You start giving them dates, you know?
Yeah.
Here's 5
okay,
days instead of $5.
Yeah, no, this is. Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
This is essentially like. Okay.
Are you with
Yeah,
me?
I'm following.
Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. Is it everybody else with me? Yes. If you're not, it's okay.
Wait.
Yeah.
So then, by the Shafi'i.
Yes.
If you go back a couple of slides and
Yeah.
build it back off of the
Dollar of the gold.
12,000 and 10,000 example, I think.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, the dollar? This one.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now it makes sense if you follow from here.
Oh, okay.
That the values different.
Yeah. Okay, jazakallah khair.
Because they're printing 2,000 more.
Yes.
So does that mean that by Shafi'i logic,
So what's
interest is permissible?
so what's interesting is that it wouldn't be just them. The Hanafis and the Hanafis also have a discussion around this, which riba al-fulus, right? This is what it's called. This is the masala. The Shafi'is talk about it. The classical Hanafis talk about it, where, all right, if I have a currency that is invented by the government, because they ran out of gold, so what did they start doing? They started making copper and they started making gold-covered coins, which do not have the same value as gold. So they're like, okay, do the rulings of riba apply to this or not? And they said no. Why? Because of this. Because now who has control over how much comes out? Right, well, the Federal Reserve today, but like the government in the past.
Okay, so are we saying that interest?
There are certain types of interest I don't have problem with, personally. I think if you speak to a vast majority of my peers, they'll all think I'm crazy. And I want to be very honest. What I'm presenting to you today is probably not a common presentation of how finances are spoken about in America, at least. But I think this is an important discussion.
So
I'll get to you, inshallah. The two major, I would say, Muslim bodies that I found that has research that agrees with this, you'll find many Azharis who agree with this, and you'll find a lot of the Malaysian scholars who I feel are very advanced in banking and capitalism and really fiscal thought. Those two groups I've actually found it very much resonates with me. But the vast majority of Muslims around the world, at least in the English-speaking population, this is not, you know what I mean? They're like, yo, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. This is haram, this is riba.
So I'm not saying, I just want to see what you think is right.
Sure.
Okay.
So I think there are certain types of interest that can fall into riba. Absolutely. So you see this is the overlap here. I can't think of any usury cases. There might be very few usury cases. I'm sorry?
Like ghetto landlords.
Yeah, well, check cashing places, you know what I mean? There's so many predatory practices that are out there that take advantage of people. For me, I think essentially, for example, based on what I hold and what I feel, I don't think mortgages are problematic. And there's a few reasons for that. That is stipulated by the federal government to keep those rates low because they want to encourage Americans to purchase homes, so that is protected. It's all protected in a way that there is a service available here in the United States that was not available to people in the past, which is bankruptcy. You know what I mean? There are a lot of different ways for the consumer to be protected in the system that you don't find in classical systems. In addition to that is housing, at least in the United States. Japan is very different, right? Japan is one of the few countries where houses actually depreciate. In the United States, there are very few places where housing depreciates. So if you look at the appreciation of houses and you work that percentage against the APR, whatever percentage you're paying interest on that, are you really paying less in value, right? By the time you pay off your house, did you really pay less in value than you did when you took that loan?
So at what point does interest become riba?
When it enters usury territory and when it's past the Federal Reserve rate.
Exactly. So if you to put it simply,
Yeah.
if I'm looking at the example, the 10,000 and the 12,000,
Yeah.
which is there is a percentage.
Yes.
So if I'm taking let's say
15.
mortgage,
Yes.
How much?
15.
15%.
No, I'm saying in the example I gave, it was like I think 2% interest or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, or whatever the number is.
Yeah.
So-
So the inflation is a percentage.
Yeah, it's a fixed percentage. It's known.
Yeah.
Because you know what other type of asset this opens up to invest in? Treasury bonds. Right? Because what are treasury bonds? It's essentially the U.S. government borrowing money from me, guaranteeing that we're going to give this percentage back because we predict that this is how much the money is going to change in value.
And that's halal.
I was gonna say, it feels very wrong.
It can, and it does. I understand why people would feel that it's wrong and problematic. But if this is where you stand, you have a personal choice. And not just that, people who've invested in treasury bonds, like that is the asset class where you actually you're pretty much guaranteed that you will get the value back of whatever it is that you allow them to take.
Mind blowing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I spent the past 10 minutes processing. Sorry.
I mean,
This is actually mind blowing
we
to me
kept
right now.
things simple.
Yeah. So here, if I use modern examples, like I said mortgages, I don't have a problem with. You know what I do have a problem with? Credit cards.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I was
the
gonna say
28%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like 30%, you know what I mean? Like 28%, like even those who are like, oh, we'll give really good rates of 19%, right? Like it's so predatory. It's so predatory. And if you look at the people who get caught, what do they get caught up with? Like, oh, that's the minimum balance that I have to pay, or that's the minimum amount I have to pay. Yeah, people don't notice, they don't realize, and like they're being taken advantage of. But a person,
the max.
right?
Like, oh, 18K?
Yeah, and that's all they see, because part of the problem is that what we need to change as a society, and this is a discussion we're going to have next week, inshallah, about consumerism and israf, is like, okay, how I have to use a credit card in the United States, right? That it's important, right, to build credit. At what point should I personally stop using one?
When
When you have like a home and a car and you have all the basic necessities
Sure.
to
Well,
survive in America within this economy.
so or you're able to pay off your monthly balance.
Because it's never going to be affordable.
Right. You know, it's the thing is, I mean, affordability is like, it's very subjective. But I will say, if you have that level, if you can use your credit card like an ATM card, bismillah.
Yeah.
I support you 100%.
What do you mean?
As in,
4 minutes.
only-
Okay.
you only-
4 minutes with interest or without?
Wait, keep going.
No, so if meaning that if I know that I'm going to stop spending on my credit card, and be like, oh no, I've hit my personal limit, because most credit cards are way beyond the limit of what cash holdings I have at the time. But if I know that I can control that limit, khalas, bismillah. I would say no, you alhamdulillah, you have a good you have a good level of self-control. Now if
If you treat it like a
debit card, yeah.
If you think about it more like a debit card that helps you build credit,
Yes.
then it's okay.
Absolutely. I'm with that 100%. Yeah. No, I'm with that 100%. Absolutely.
Regardless
Uh-huh.
of how much the interest rate is.
Yeah, because you're not paying it.
Okay.
Now, what if 1 month,
So long.
you know what I'm saying, what if 1 month you fall short? And you're like, oh man, I miscalculated, I spent too much, blah, blah, blah. I would say, no, for that person it's still okay, because they didn't intentionally do it.
It wasn't careless.
Yeah, it wasn't careless. Now, if you're careless and this starts becoming a habit, no, you don't deserve it, right? You need to stop, and this is where you're going to be held accountable. You know, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Yes?
I just had a question about like
I think it's evolving and moving, and you know, part of the reason for that is, I would say about 10 years ago, scholars would not do something that's called talfiq, right? So talfiq is when you blend madhahib concerning issues. 10 years ago, you would never see that. I see it so much in banking, so much. Like they're just trying to find any single way to navigate and to move, and this isn't something that wasn't accepted before. Another thing that's now being more accepted that was not even considered a discussion on the table was moonsighting calculations.
Was what?
Moonsighting calculation.
What does that mean?
Meaning that they calculate when the moon, like, you know what I mean, when the new month is, versus going out and actually looking for it. Like, it's become more acceptable. So the thing is, like, you know, are certain opinions evolving around these things? Yeah, I think they are. And things that in the past is like, you might have like a few people holding on to it. Now you see like a growing number holding on to those things. And why is that? I think, at least with the moon sighting thing, is like, oh, well, we have better tools now, right? And with this, being very honest, I think we're better understanding banking now. Yeah.
One more question about the
Sure.
credit card.
So you know who the credit card's worst customer is?
People that own money.
The people that pay it off monthly. The only reason they're able to give points and the only reason they're able to do all these other things, you know why? Is because of the people who are unable to control themselves. So getting to your point, I think that it is completely reasonable to use all of the banking vehicles we have available to us within limits. If the intention is to create our own parallel institutions, and the next step being creating exit institutions from that system. Is that fair? Right? This is in my heart and this is in my mind, right? So I think what is the next step? The next step is to have Muslim financial institutions, Muslim credit cards, Muslim banks, not Islamic. I want to be very clear, because I want the Muslim community to have control of the capital. And then once they have control of capital, you can start giving riba, like interest-free loans, right? You can get to that. Eventually, you can get to that point. Right now, the Jewish community does it, right? They're called like hearts, it's loans or something like. Look it up. As an ethnic Jew, you can go to a bank and they'll give you a interest-free loan. Like it's known. And like I said, just do a Google search. Like, do Jews get interest-free loans? And yes, they do. Why? Because they've created a community where they want to do that. Okay, like, do we want to create a community where we do that? Absolutely. We need to empower each other.
Because it's considered theft when they take from each other.
Yeah, but they can do it with others.
Yeah.
Us, we're the miskin. I'm saying we're the miskin goyams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like.
Oh dear God. That word.
Stealing is like halal.
And part of the other reason that I want to, like, I have no issue kind of sharing this opinion is the scholars, they say la mashahat fi istilah. Like, don't get caught up in terminology. Get caught up in what is actually going on. Right? You can a rose by any other name still smells just as sweet, right? Like, it's the same thing here. Just because you put a label on something, is it halal or is it not? Right? That's the question that needs to be answered. Tafadhal, ya akhi.
On the flat fee, where do you draw the distinction?
Okay.
For example,
That's actually a very good question.
credit card companies, they
Yeah.
won't charge you the APR
Yeah.
percentage
Yeah.
to allow you to
Oh,
do something with
okay.
the
Well, I'll give you an excellent example of that. Balance transfers. They'll be like 0%. You do a balance transfer, you don't have to pay any interest on your loan. But we're going to charge you 4% up front to do that transfer. No, that's riba. Because why, right? Because all they're doing is they're servicing your loan. Now, I would say, depending on your situation, yes, take advantage of the balance transfer because it's better than you paying 30%. If you're stuck. But should I do that voluntarily just because I want to have lower monthly payments? No, pay off your debts.
But I'm more speaking on like non-percentage charges because we define
Like a yearly charge for a credit card, like that.
Like, I'll give you an example.
Sure.
Credit card companies, if you put a large amount on in one payment, they'll
Yeah.
split the payment of that amount, but they won't charge you a percentage. So it's like you can't say this is above the Federal Reserve percentage.
Yeah.
They'll charge you a flat fee. So
Can you do me a favor? Can you email me that example?
yeah.
Okay. I'm curious
Sure.
to hear about it.
And it could be a small amount, could be a large amount, but like
Yeah.
just speaking on the principle.
Yeah. Okay. The question I'm going to close with today is, and I'll get to you, inshallah. I saw your hand. Like, why do we use amount when we talk about riba, but we use value when we talk about zakat?
The intention. It's the intention. Because
I just want to leave on that note.
I think the riba,
Ah,
the riba is the money to the money.
sure. And zakat is
Zakat, whatever you own.
like money to money.
No, whatever you own. Value.
The value.
Value.
Okay.
I think that's the question.
Zakat to the gold.
Inflation?
وصلى الله على خير خلق نبينا محمد وعلى آله
You have a
وصحبه. Yes.
question?
No, we have two questions. تفضل.
So as I'm listening,
Do,
it doesn't make sense.
can you impose your individual piety on others?
No, but like
Okay.
if I'm like coming alive about
So that's your personal piety.
yeah.
Like all the stuff that I said, you could be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm gonna keep paying rent. Bismillah. And I was very clear. The people who want to make things more stringent, people have a more conservative mindset. Bismillah. May Allah bless you and make that your path to Jannah. But my job as an imam, my job as a researcher, is to be academically honest. That's my job. And say, because at the end of the day, I can present you, either it's going to sit with you and you're going to be like, no, what he's saying actually makes sense. Because I cannot be those people who make things haram that are not haram. It's my job is to make things clear, right? The community chose me to be the imam. What is my job? Okay, here, these are the paths that you have available to you. These are the choices that you can make. The choice that you make now is between you and Allah. If you want to take that rent path, go for it. If you want to go conventional banking and purchase your home, go. You know what I mean? You understand the reasoning behind them. And that's your choice. But at the end of the day, being لا تقولوا بما تصف ألسنتكم هذا حلال هذا حرام ليفتروا على الله كذب. Like don't call things halal and haram because you'll fall into extremism. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word iftira. Like this is extremism. So like I said, my job is to be like, no, this is what it is. The path you choose, that's between you and Allah. And what helps you choose your path? Your dhamir, right? Your heart. And if this is, that's not something I can do. Alhamdulillah, don't do it. Because Allah's not going to ask you, what did Farhan say? He's going to be like, what decision did you make? And what was your heart telling you? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, استفتي قلبك ولو أفتاك الناس. He said, ask your heart, even if people give you fatwa. And this is one of those situations. Yes.
So did you say that there are certain credit cards that are charging yearly fees? Are they considered riba?
I don't know. I'm a little bit familiar that there are fees for certain cards because they give you access to certain things.
Yeah.
That I'm okay with, right? Because it's just like paying a membership fee to anything, right? I could buy a membership fee to Planet Fitness, and if I never use it, it doesn't matter. And if I use it every day, it doesn't matter because I didn't pay for the use, I paid for access. And it's the same thing here. If the card is to give me access to certain things and services, I don't have a problem with that. But if there are other things that are involved, that's something I need to hear a little bit more about. Yes. And then we'll get to the Instagram question and then we'll close. Yeah.
Okay. I've seen certain programs where they're like, this is a way to have halal mortgage.
Yeah.
Finance your home in a halal way. What do you think about that?
I think if you believe that riba applies to amount, it's reasonable. It's a little pricey. It's definitely more expensive. But I think if you believe this, I think it's a reasonable alternative. No.
So follow up on this question.
Yeah.
The interest that a bank or the mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
like the percentage, would that equate to the inflation over let's say 5, 10 or no matter?
Yeah.
Are you convinced that
I personally am.
over 15, let's say, years, does that percentage, no matter what, equates to the inflation?
Yeah. I think as long as it stays around there, I'm okay with that because I believe it's an even exchange in value. Yeah. Tfadal.
The question says, how do financial companies possibly survive without losing it or loopholes?
This is something I wanted to. I didn't get to it, but I wanted to talk about trade. Like we spent all the time talking about riba. We didn't talk about trade, because at the end of the day, is banking in Islam a for-profit service?
Absolutely.
No, it's not.
Oh. Sorry, I thought you meant banking with Muslims.
No, not with Muslims. It's in Islam, right?
Yeah.
So banking in Islam is not a for-profit service.
Yeah.
It is meant to be a stimulus.
Yeah.
It's meant to help, right? So when you talk about qard hasana, when you talk about debts, when you talk about all of these things, it's meant to empower the community. Banks don't do that. Like there are certain services, like I said, there are very specific services which I do feel are actually empowering for the community. But in general, I find most of their services are very predatory. So when it comes to the banks and how they're structured, I have a huge problem with them because they take advantage of people. Yes.
Okay, what about Muslim banks where they're so there's this something that you would benefit you and facilitate your life and it costs $10,000, and if you were to get it from a bank plus interest after interest and everything, you would have wound up paying
X amount, right? Yeah.
But then with a Muslim bank, because they're buying it and then selling it to you, and they're buying it, they're selling it to you. They bought it for $10,000, they're selling it to you for $20,000.
Yeah. So they're acting more like a middleman more so than like creditors and debtors.
Well, yeah.
Right.
But would it then, if it's
more
affordable to whoever the debtor is?
Sure. I mean, whatever the case might be. Like I said, the idea behind Muslim, I would say Islamic banking, quote unquote, none of these are like really for-profit services. Like this is not a way to get wealthy in Islam. You're not going to have wealthy bankers because other than financial transactions, they'll make money off of using a card, right? You know what I mean? Because you're getting access to use that card instead of carrying around cash. Like there are very limited ways in that they would make money. But I don't think it would be a huge industry the way it is, you know, in the world today. So yeah, it's, don't get me wrong, it's evil. Like the banking system is vile. It's really bad. It's really predatory. But it's what we have. So what are we doing to work to get out of it? And part of it is having money. Like if as a community you don't have money, there's no way out of it. And which is why I think it's reasonable for some people to take that path. I don't think as a community it's reasonable. Because then you never have people who are generating or developing wealth. You're never uplifting the community. You're never able to give people jobs. It's like just you become so limited. And I don't think I don't think that was the purpose of the Sharia. The Sharia, like I said, it came to limit us. It didn't come to choke us. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi. Yes.
Would using a credit card be considered riba?
It depends. I think we already answered the question. Yeah.
Totally answers this
Hi, they just joined. May Allah guide them. Tell them to go over the video. Alhamdulillah, we recorded, so they can watch the video, but we did answer the question. Answer it. Be nice. Okay. As long as they're using it as a debit card, it's fine. May Allah bless them. What we'll do next week, inshallah, I'll finish up the discussion on trade, right? Like what does trade look like in Islam? And we'll also talk about israf, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And then the third week, we'll talk about these specific transactions, like are student loans okay? Are small business loans okay? You know, mortgages, what are the choices that we have? Credit cards, right? You know, warranties, different types of insurances, right? These are all different vehicles that are available to us. Is it permissible to utilize them or not? Why not? And that's going to be that discussion. Jazakumullah khair. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi.